Welcome to the Mercury Center Stage podcast, where we get to know the individuals on stage and those behind the scenes. Thanks for joining us. I am Brian Ritter. I'm the executive director of the Mercury Chamber Orchestra, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Mercury's concertmaster and co-founder, Jonathan Godfrey. Welcome to the podcast, Jonathan.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we just began Mercury's 20th season, and I wanted to start off, can you even imagine that is possible?
No, not at all. You know, I was thinking back recently at one of the early strategic planning meetings that we had for Mercury, where the person who was facilitating the meeting asked to project into the future what Mercury would look like in 5 years or in 10 years. And the way I went about doing this was in the form of a holiday letter, as though I was writing a letter to my family and friends during the holidays to tell them what had happened in the past year. And this is, at that point, 10 years in the future. And this is before, or maybe it was right when both Antoine and I had really young children. And I remember writing the letter saying, I'm so thrilled that this year kids are in school, so we have more time to practice and rehearse, and we were able to record CDs, and our concerts have expanded, and we've gone into places that we didn't realize that we were going to go, and not just the one hall downtown, but we've been doing concerts all over Houston, and we've done some touring. And I was thinking, all of those things came true over the past 20 years. It's really amazing to think that this little thing that started with just Antoine and myself and Anna, my wife, and Lori, that from this little tiny brainchild, it evolved into this amazing thing that we call Mercury.
Yeah, it's so remarkable to see the growth over that time. Of course, the financial growth of all of you really nurturing early on some of those key supporters. The big foundations in Houston, but of course the individuals who are attending the concerts, and that just growing remarkably over the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. And then certainly the artistic growth of the organization in terms of the programming, the size of the concerts, the repertoire that all of you have so wonderfully performed is truly outstanding and exciting.
It's been a real pleasure to be a part of it from the very beginning, starting with those little, I think our very first concert was just harpsichord, violin, gamba, and voice. And for a while, that was the extent of it. And it wasn't until maybe a year and a half or 2 years into it that we got our first ensemble that was maybe 8 people and 10 people. And it was such an amazing thing to be a part of this kind of from the beginning as it expanded. And honestly, back at that time, I couldn't have possibly imagined playing Beethoven and Brahms symphonies and being able to do the repertoire that we've been able to do. It's just been incredible.
Before we talk more about Mercury, we'll certainly come back to that, but I'm curious about yourself and where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and lived there for the first 16 years of my life. My parents are not musical, but my grandmother was a church organist. And I don't remember this, but this is what I've been told. So when I was really young, there was a woman who was a member of the church that we were attending, and she decided she wanted to start teaching really young children piano. And my mother, being the daughter of a pianist / organist, said, "Sign my son up. We're going to start doing this." So I think I was 2 apparently when this started, which I have a hard time fathoming as real. But I took piano lessons for a long time. And when I was in kindergarten, when I was at a Montessori school, and the teachers had 2 daughters, and one daughter played clarinet and the other one played violin, and they came and played for the class. And I remember coming home and telling my mom, "I want to play the violin." And she said, "But you already play the piano." And I said, "But I really want to play the violin." And she said, "Okay, but you can't quit the piano." So for my 5th birthday, I got a little violin and started taking lessons and did both of them for a long time together, violin and piano. And eventually I quit the violin and I quit the piano, but my cousins all started taking piano lessons. and I was worried they were going to be better than me at piano. So I had to jump back into the piano lessons so that I could do that. And then public school time came around, and in fifth grade, it was the time when they started ensembles and they started band and orchestra. And my parents asked me, "Do you want to play an instrument?" And I said, "Yes." And I thought about it, and I really wanted to play piccolo because I thought it would be really cool to have a tiny instrument that I could put in my pocket and carry around with me. The band director said, "Well, you can't start on piccolo, you have to start on flute." Towards the end of the year, the band director pulled me aside and said, "You know, you're pretty good at the flute. You should consider taking private lessons." And I thought to myself, you know, I already have all those years of violin lessons. Why don't I switch back to the violin? So I switched back to violin. I had a really fantastic high school. I went to Lee Summit High School in the Kansas City area. It's a suburb of Kansas City. And it was a really musically rich public school. I think it was a big school. There were 2,600 students in the high school there. And I think that there were 7 bands, 5 choirs, and 2 orchestras in our public high school. It was really championed there. And the public, I remember our high school orchestra went on tour to various things. We went to the Midwest International Band and Orchestra Conference in Chicago, and I played Mendelssohn Concerto with my public high school at this festival in Chicago when I was a junior. And the summer between my sophomore and junior year, I went to the Interlochen summer camp up in northern Michigan. And that was life-changing because, you know, coming from Missouri, from a suburb of Kansas City, you know, it was a really small pond. And all of a sudden I'm in this World Youth Symphony Orchestra with people from all over the world and reading music and playing a concert every week. And I fell in love with playing an orchestra at that point. And it's, I don't know, I think it's really interesting. Lots of people who study an instrument have dreams of being that soloist on stage. And I think for me, always from the beginning, it was, I wanted to be part of this ensemble. I wanted to be part of this group, and playing with a big symphony was just fantastic. It brought up things in me that I didn't know were there. I loved my experience at Interlochen. I went the summer between my sophomore and junior year, and then I went again the summer between my junior and senior year. My sister, who was a ballet dancer at this time, she decided she went that summer as well, and she said, "Oh, I want to stay here and go to boarding school." And I remember thinking, "You are crazy. Why would you want to do this?" And went back home and realized that, yeah, I kind of wanted to do that too. So my senior year, I spent at Interlochen Arts Academy.
Tell us a little bit about your time at Interlochen. You know, it's way up there in northern Michigan. And you spent the summers there. It sounded like you've spent extended time there during the school year for a semester or several semesters. What were those 2 experiences like? And did you deal with a lot of snow?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, they're very different experiences. The summer experience is huge. There's thousands of students and lots of people around, and concerts every day. There are hundreds of concerts that happen over. It's an 8-week long, or at the time when I was there, it was an 8-week long summer camp. And then the academy is much smaller. I think there are 400 students, and everyone lives in dorms, and you are very isolated and you practice a lot. I used to get up and shower and go and practice before breakfast in one of the studios my violin teacher at the time, her studio was in the basement of where the cafeteria was. I think all the string faculty were there in that space. And there was a room where we had studio class across the hall that I was able to, I figured out how to pick the lock to get in there to practice. And so I would go at, you know, about 6:30 in the morning, and I'd, you know, do my scales and warm-ups before the day to get started on a good foot. But during the winter time, you know, I'd take a shower and I'd leave my dorm, and I remember my hair would freeze between my dorm and, you know, your nostrils, you breathe in through your nose and you feel everything freezing up in your sinuses. It was bitter cold. That's where I met my wife. Anna was actually a student there at Interlochen as well, and went on to the Cleveland Institute of Music to study with Don Wallerstein and David Updegraff. And that was another life-changing thing. I suppose there was a point there, my senior year in high school, where I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to do physics and applied math or music. And I auditioned for Don Wallerstein's studio in Cleveland. And I remember thinking, if I get into his studio, then I'll do violin. So there we go. And it was interesting going from Interlochen, this small school, to Cleveland, an even smaller school. I think our freshman class was 55 freshmen in that class. And 12 of us were from Interlochen of the 55. And Anna, my wife, was there as well. Antoine and I met in Japan when we were both part of the Pacific Music Festival. It was a orchestral festival where players from all over the world gathered, and with great conductors, we performed music, and we were there in residency for several weeks, and then toured Japan. That was right as I was beginning the exploration of graduate school studies. He said, "Oh, you should come to Rice. Rice is a good school." And I thought, okay, well, I'll put that on the list, and stuck it in the back of my head. And we ended up here, both Anna and I ended up at Rice University, which is just a fantastic music school. And after coming here, Antoine asked me if I'd like to play some tango music with him. And I thought, okay, this will be fun. So we started playing with this tango group at a bar in the village called the Orchid Lounge. And we played there, I think it was Wednesday nights from 9 p.m. until midnight or 1 in the morning, something like this. It was kind of crazy. And we started, I think Antoine met his wife through tango dancing. We met Lori, and Anna and I got married 21 years ago now. And so we've kind of been together as a little family for a long time. I can't tell you the number of dinners we cooked.
I saw a photograph recently that I gathered dated back to those early days of Mercury, and it's all of you, the 4 founders, yourself and Anna, Antoine, and his wife Lori, and you're all decked out, but you're in a kitchen, and you're it appears you're scrambling to make what appeared to be a pretty fancy meal. Do you recall that, and what was going on?
I do. So at the beginning, or early on, Lori and Antoine and Anna and I, from the beginning of our friendship, it's always been about music and somehow about food too. When Mercury started, we thought, okay, we could share this too. We could do a concert and we could prepare a meal. And people don't realize that we cook. And from the beginning, we cooked, and we cooked serious. And I remember, actually, if that's the picture I'm thinking of, that was probably an herb-crusted beef tenderloin and scalloped potato. I remember preparing meals for patrons, for people who supported Mercury, and doing a concert in their homes. It was one of the things we did early on as fundraisers for Mercury.
When you share that not only music but also food and all of those connections around it is sort of what brought Mercury to be. It's so much a part of the DNA, that special relationship building and
Sure.
and nurturing and intimacy of it all. It's just so wonderful, and I think that's one of the secrets to the success. You went to a marvelous high school, it sounds like, where there was lots of opportunity musically. Mm-hmm. Was it there, or was it during some of the summer camp work that maybe you got that spark and said, boy, I think I could do this as a career? Where did that happen?
I don't know. I think it was an evolution for sure, because it was when we moved to Lee Summit to that was when I was in 7th grade. So I went from kind of really mediocre music in the public school to, I was in junior high school, and there was a string orchestra there. I remember the Lee Summit Junior High School had recently gone to the International Music Festival in Vienna and performed. I mean, this junior high school string ensemble.
Wow.
And all of a sudden there was a spark. There was a guy there who, I remember we had to fill out practice cards. We had to say how many minutes we practiced every day, and we had to turn these in. And in order to get an A in orchestra, you had to practice 150 minutes a day, which broke down to 30 minutes Monday through Friday. And I kind of had this, I remember when I moved there, I thought, okay, we'll do this. And then my colleague in junior high school, who was the concertmaster of that orchestra at the time, he would turn in his practice cards with like 1,400 minutes. I mean, he would practice 3 or 4 hours a day, kind of. And all of a sudden, I was thrown into this situation where I wasn't the best. Not only was I wasn't the best when I was in 7th grade, but there were people all around me who were kind of really into it. And I think it goes hand in hand with that idea of, I don't want to do this by myself. I want to do this with people. There's something about having a group of people playing together that's just so, I don't know, it creates, there's something there in the music when it's more than one. I mean, with one person, it's wonderful too. But when it's more than one, there's that extra something involved too.
Well, I wanted to take us back to Mercury. You know, so 20 years. Any super memorable moments from time on stage that that stay with you?
So there are so many. It would be hard to pick one. But if I had to pick one, there was a concert that we did at Miller Outdoor Theater once, where we played Vivaldi's Four Seasons. And we've done this program several times, but
with you as soloist.
With me as soloist, yeah. And I guess there are two different versions of this Four Seasons story that I'll tell, and both of them happening at Miller Outdoor Theater. So with Miller, you're always concerned about the weather and what's going to happen, because the audience is all on the lawn, or if they're not in the chairs, and that's part of the experience, is having that lawn experience. And so if it was to rain, it would be a horrible thing. I do remember playing there once with the Houston Grand Opera in the middle of Tropical Storm Allison, and it's no fun. So we were going to do the Four Seasons, and there was a chance of rain, and the clouds are kind of rolling in, and I got there early and was warming up and thinking, I hope it doesn't rain. But thankfully it didn't, and we're playing along through, I think this was an 8 seasons concert, so it was the Four Seasons of Vivaldi and 4 seasons of Piazzolla, kind of alternating between the two. When we get to summer has this
finale,
that finale that's super fast, and it's supposed to be depicting a thunderstorm. And so we get there to start, and there's this fermata in the music where you stop. And at that point, there was this tremendous clap of thunder. And then we kept going, and we stopped again. And it was timed with precision. It could not have been done with someone on a board pushing a button any better than it was. And the amazing part of that is, so there were only 2 thunderclaps during that whole performance, and they were in those 2 spots. We finished the 8 seasons. Everyone packs up their stuff and walks to the car, and we all get in our cars, and a torrential rainstorm happens. So it was like kind of this perfect storm where we didn't have the rain during the concert, except for the 2 little thunder things in their perfectly timed place, and then getting in our cars. So that was one that is kind of unforgettable. And then the other one, I think it was several years later, and it may have been the first concert that you were executive director for, when we played
You definitely did 4 seasons at that concert.
Yeah. And I remember playing that same movement of Summer, and the plug in the tip of my bow that holds all the hair in popped out. And so I had no hair on my bow. I just had a stick. But because I had been rosining my bow, there was rosin on the stick still. So I kept playing with just the stick on the strings, and somehow it worked. It still spoke, and I'm grateful there was a microphone there so that you could hear. But it was pretty spectacular. It looked kind of exciting too, with all the bow hair flying all over the place.
Well, yes, I remember this very, very well. That was my first concert. And I remember, what I remember about it is just at that point, looking up on stage, and it was like this horse tail, just kind of animated on stage. But it was at once fascinating and terrifying.
Yeah.
I can't imagine for you.
I was right there in it with you. And the first thought in my head was, I can't stop. I have to keep going. And then my next thought is, do I have another bow in my case that I can use for the rest of the concert? And I did. So it was all good.
So now it's time for a segment that we're calling Favorite 5.
Uh-huh.
What is your favorite book?
Favorite book? That is really difficult to pick one. I've been reading this summer Brendan Burchard's High Performance Habits, which is fascinating, highly recommended. If I had to, if you'll indulge me, uh, I love The Lord of the Rings. I've read it to my children. I remember it being read to me as a child, the Tolkien stories. He's such a wordsmith. And there's another one, the Talent Code, I think is fascinating, talking about myelinization in the brain of repetitive practice and deep practicing and what that means.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite beverage?
Sparkling water. Pretty bland, but really cold. We have a soda stream, and I probably single-handedly keep the LaCroix people in business.
And now I'm a big fan as well. Any flavors or just the straight stuff?
No, I like the flavors. Grapefruit, and
Yeah, that's
actually
my
they
favorite.
have one that came out this summer, the limoncello, actually recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is I like citrusy things. So
Yeah. How about your favorite movie or TV series?
oh my goodness, that's really hard too. I mean, I was a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings books, and therefore the movies kind of fell in place too. They were such epic things that, yeah, I'll go with that too. Lord of the Rings.
Okay. Either for yourself or maybe as a family, what's your favorite travel destination?
So there's a little beach south of Cancun called Porto Aventuras, and there's an Omni Hotel there, which is fantastic. And I've been there 3 times. And what's really lovely about it is it's an Omni Hotel, but there are maybe 30 rooms in the whole hotel, and every room has a balcony that looks out on the beach. And I was told, although I'm not sure I believe it, but I was told by my father-in-law, who is in marketing, that that's where they filmed the Corona commercials, where they see people sitting on the beach with the Coronas.
Oh, yeah.
There's no one there. And I've been there several times, and you know, it's the beauty of Cancun and the Mayan Riviera without the crowds and kind of MTV crowd of Cancun. So it's really peaceful and beautiful, and a beautiful beach, and I love it.
Now, here's an impossible question. I don't know if myself could answer it, but I'm going to ask you anyway, because I bet our audiences would love to maybe, get this recommendation, and that is, what is your favorite classical music recording?
Recording. That's impossible. I mean, I think that as a family, we have still, even today, between 2,000 and 3,000 CDs. Although I have to admit that we don't listen to the discs so much anymore, with all of the availability of Spotify and streaming, and the convenience of, you know, typing in a word and having 4 different choices of something to listen to.
Yeah.
I loved the old LPs of the Cleveland Quartet playing Brahms quartets. It was my teacher when I was in conservatory, and there's just something about the passion with which they deliver that, and the breathing. You can hear the breathe. I mean, this is something that lots of recording engineers today kind of scoff at. We're going to get rid of all the extra sounds. I don't want to hear anyone breathe. We're going to make it really analytical and perfect. There was something that's just so fantastic about the Brahms recordings of the Cleveland Quartet, the old one with Don Wallerstein.
Yes, fantastic. You know, some of those imperfections are so great. One of my favorites is a Mahler recording. I think it's with the New York Philharmonic, but Bernstein is conducting. And in that finale, the principal trumpet sort of misses the big note, and you know, it's just great.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's like a souvenir from another time. So
for sure, I remember really clearly. There's a Boston Pops recording that I have of I think Dvorak New World Symphony, and you can hear one of the violinists come in wrong for just a second, like blip, and then everyone goes and I love those kinds of things. That's it makes it real.
Yes, indeed. Well, there we go. There's our favorite 5 segment. That was fun. Thank you, Jonathan, for your recommendations. So as we conclude our conversation, I wanted to ask you a little bit about what these past few months have been like, and particularly what music has meant to you during this really, really exceptional time, a very unusual time, very unsettling time. But wanted to ask you just to reflect a little bit on what music has meant to you during this time.
It's been really hard. It's been really hard. You know, I was talking about how I was drawn to violin playing because of playing with other people. And it's the thing that's been kind of stolen from all of us in this time, is that we don't have the chance to make music together, or we have to redefine the way we're doing it together. You know, music has this ability to capture emotions and feelings in ways that we can't describe with words. It's kind of one of its strong things. So I certainly have found myself listening to a lot of music. Anna and I have a school of music for young children, and we've been doing classes online. We've been trying to keep this community alive through the music. Music is a part of us all, and during these times, we just have to work a little harder to make sure that we can feed that part. I think that the words are escaping me. It's really hard to explain what it is about it, but the fact that it is able to help us connect to those emotions in kind of a deep and profound way, I find now more than ever I need to be listening to and making music. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think you've beautifully said it, and I for one can't wait to see you and all of our friends back up on stage, creating live music together and sharing it with our audiences in that incredible dynamic that we all create together. So we will do it very soon, but just not yet. But so that's all the time we have. But Jonathan, thank you so much for the conversation today.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thanks for joining the Mercury Center Stage podcast. We hope that you'll share your feedback. You can do so on our website. Keep listening to great music, and we'll see you again soon.